Hello everyone. I'm going to talk about the paper 1 assignment in brief. If you're watching this video, it's because the paper 1 assignment is coming up quick. And I like to just go over a few points to make sure everybody's on the same page. So as it says here on the assignment, what I'm asking you to do for paper 1 is to write a short paper, 2 to 3 pages, in response to a specific prompt. That's just a fancy word to a specific question, a specific topic. And in this class, you use the papers to show me that you understood the material you read in the chapter, and you can apply theories of gender identity development in this case, or in other chapters, theories of gender communication to characters in movies. And so we just basically use the characters in the movies as sort of like our case studies to talk about some of the concepts in the textbook. For this paper, I'm really just trying to get a feel of how people deal with these sorts of writing assignments. That's why it's so short, and it's very specific. You're writing about a very long movie. It's 3 hours. A lot happens to Mason in those 3 hours. We see him from, a young age until heading off to college. And there's a lot of influences we could possibly talk about in terms of his gender identity development. But I ask you to do something really specific. And that's explained here in the prompt. I want you to analyze how Mason's experiences in boyhood relate to the cognitive development theory of gender identity development. And that's on page 37 in our textbook. You look at it in perusal. That's really specific. And even more specific than that, I don't just say, write about anything in those 3 hours that you think relates to cognitive development theory. I say, look at these scenes. So at 1 hour 18 to 122, that's when he's with a bunch of boys on a sleepover, and they're talking about women, and the males around him, older boys, are trying to tell him this is how you deal with women. And then also the scenes from the movie that deal with his relationship with Sheena, his first girlfriend. So we see them meeting, we see them going away for the weekend to Austin to look at the University of Texas, and then we see sort of their breakup. And so I ask you to talk about just those scenes from this long movie, and that's because it's a short paper. I don't want to ask you to write, endlessly for this first paper. And I want to see that you can really use some specific evidence from the textbook, from this one section about cognitive development theory, and some specific scenes from the movie to make a point. And I want you to answer this question here, down here. What gender role modeling about how to treat women did Mason accept and or reject from his male peers? So in this early scene, we see other boys telling him, well, this is what women want, this is how you should treat them, yada, yada, yada. And then so he got that training, right? He got that peer pressure. When you look at his relationship with Sheena, do you see him reflecting those attitudes towards women, or do you see him rejecting them? Or is it some mix, which is probably the most likely? But, you answer your way. You answer what you see. And that's really what this whole paper is about, is you showing me that you can take one of these theories and apply it to scenes from the movie and come up with some sort of interpretation of this question related to Mason's gender identity development, with your own thinking, with your own critical thinking skills. Okay, so that's really the task. That's what you're doing. One of the things I try to be clear about here is that your audience for this, you should use a formal academic tone. So this is your first formal paper for this class. And even though you're writing it for an audience of one person in this case, me, this is practice for writing for other professors. And when professors ask you to write a paper, as opposed to a journal or a reflection or some other low stakes writing assignment. They're looking for something in particular, and that's what I mean by formal academic tone. You might think, oh, well, that means I don't use I. That's sometimes true. Uh, oh, I should use fancy words. Well, maybe. In this case, you want to use specific terminology from our textbook related to gender identity development, especially cognitive development theory, that term. But also, when we say formal writing, we mean writing that, one, has a purpose, two, that you're aware of who you're writing it for, and three, that it's been carefully crafted. So when someone asks you to write a formal paper, an academic paper for a college class, you don't just whip it off at the last minute. You go through a process of brainstorming, drafting, hopefully have someone else look at it, and then revising and then submitting. In the best case scenario, you would start at least 2 or 3 days in advance and sort of go through some of those steps. So when I say formal academic writing, that's what I'm looking for, writing that's been crafted in some way over time. Okay. So there's a lot of, I know the paper assignment is long. I just like to give people a lot of information in case they need it, they want it. Things like how to organize an academic essay. What does an introduction do? What does a thesis statement do? What do your supporting paragraphs do? And I do want to highlight here, because this is something that students often miss, is that in your supporting paragraphs, I will be looking specifically that you use terminology and descriptions from the textbook, and that you used quotations, things the characters did in these specific scenes to support whatever it is however you're going to answer this question. What gender role modeling about how to treat women did Mason accept and or reject from his male peers? So, in your first supporting paragraph, you want to talk about that scene with his male peers. What do they try to teach him? And in your second and maybe third supporting paragraphs, you want to talk about Sheena and how you see that playing out in his relationship with her in high school. So as it says here, I want to see you working with specific evidence from the film in a detailed way. I don't want general, broad statements about Mason. I want to see you looking at specific things that were said or done and making the connections using those examples. All right. So linked to using those specifics, here in the artificial intelligence disclosure is making sure that you use citation carefully to show that you did the work for this assignment. You are the one who found examples in the movie. You are the one who worked with the textbook in perusal and figured out what to say from there and what to paraphrase in terms of that material. And what I'm looking for really is parenthetical citations for material from the textbook. That means page numbers for any quotations or paraphrases, and timestamp citations for your examples from the film. What a timestamp citation does is it, in parentheses, instead of putting a page number for something that you read, you're watching a film on our Blackboard site. When somebody says something, you put the exact hour, minute, and second that quote started. So that when I'm reading your paper and you say, well, Mason's friend said this to him, or this character said that, or Sheena said this, I can find it really quickly by just using that timestamp citation. So that I'm looking for those citations in your paper, and anytime you use those sorts of parenthetical citations, you also need a works cited list. And I'll talk a little bit more about those things in a moment and how to do them if you're totally not sure how to do that. But I do want to point out that the other thing required at the end of every paper, I'm trying to work more with artificial intelligence and sort of talking about the ethics of what's okay and what's not okay to use in your paper. So at the end of your paper, I need a page or an entry that's titled Artificial Intelligence Disclosure. And you either need to say, I did not use artificial intelligence in creating this paper, or, and I do allow some use of AI, so this is fine. I did use artificial intelligence in creating this paper, namely, whatever type you used and how you used it. And these are the allowable uses listed here. So just tell me what you used. And then I need you to follow up with the statement, I affirm I did not generate text with artificial intelligence and directly copy it into my paper. So I need to see that at the end of your paper. It's just a part of the process now. I want to make sure when we're talking about using AI, I want to see that you're using your critical thinking skills in these papers, because that's one of the goals for this course. It's what the university expects me to focus on, expects me to evaluate for. So I need to see your own critical thinking in these papers. I don't need to see examples from AI. That's also the reason why I need to see your citations, because that's how you prove to me that you did that work. That you didn't just generate some material on AI and then put it in your paper as your examples. Note that beyond plagiarism, AI, I've found in the past when students use AI to generate examples, it will just make up things as things that happened in these movies. It's really interesting to me that AI has really been developed to respond to human prompting in a way that's pleasing. And so it will never say, oh, I don't have any examples of that. I mean, we're dealing with a pretty specific question about a pretty small portion of a movie that's 10 years old. So, I mean, AI might not have a lot of examples about this question out there, even though it has a lot of information. And if it doesn't have an example or a specific response to a question, it's just going to make up examples. And you can't put that in your paper because it's very unethical in academic writing to make up examples to support whatever it is you're arguing. That's considered just totally wrong. AI also reproduces biases and prejudices, and of course, I mean, in this class, we're trying to avoid writing with bias and prejudice. And also, as it says here, you're just, if you rely on AI to do your thinking for you, you're not developing your skills, you're not developing the things that people come to a university to work on, critical thinking, and academic writing to some extent. Okay. And then finally, here at the end, and I feel like, here we are on page 6. It's just, I feel like I have to explain all these things to make sure everybody's on the same page. Best practices, late policy, rewrites, evaluation. But here at the very end, citation advice and help with the details. If you are not sure how to do those parenthetical citations, down here there's a video about the basics of MLA parenthetical citation. You just click there, you should come to it. I'm sure to most people timestamp citation is new. You can click on here. This is a very short video. It's like 1 or 2 minutes. It'll just show you how to do that. Make those timestamp citations. And then finally, if you're going to use parenthetical citations, you need a works cited list. You can just cut and paste mine here. You're going to learn how to do this on your own later in the semester, but for right now, just cut and paste mine. That's fine. There should be 2 items on it because you're doing timestamp citations from Boyhood, so you need that on your works cited list, and also our textbook. So here's the full, our 2 authors for the Gender Communication Connection, and then the publisher and the date it was published. So those are there for you, and like I said, just cut and paste. All right, I'm going to stop here. I hope you found it helpful. Of course, write to me if you have any questions. And thanks for your time.